walk around and you see people with scanners in their hand and you ask, okay, well, what are you scanning? What's that? Well, it's how we move inventory, right? We have to scan it and move it on to the next phase of the production line. I'm like, oh, okay. What does that scanner talk to? And I think just by getting out there and asking those questions, I think you can learn a lot. And you're not doing it to be critical of anyone, to get anybody in trouble. You just want to know, right? You just want to know what's happening.
SC Media and our sponsor Arctic Wolf are proud to present this month's CISO Stories program. Each month, the CISO Stories program explores a cybersecurity topic selected by the Cyber Risk Alliance's CISO community and provides content that examines that topic from a variety of perspectives. Hosted by Todd Fitzgerald, best-selling author of CISO Compass, the CISO Stories weekly podcast features content powered by the 1,100-plus members of Cyber Risk Alliance's CISO community. Listen to previous CISO Stories podcast episodes at CISOstoriespodcast.com. Cybersecurity Collaborative is a unique membership community enabling cybersecurity leaders to work together in a trusted environment. To learn more, visit CISOstoriespodcast.com/CSC. I'm your host, Todd Fitzgerald, and this week we welcome John Germain, founder, CEO at Security Moments and former CISO at Xylem and Duck Creek Technologies. Welcome, John.
Hi, Todd. How are you?
Great to see you again. So before we get started today, you've had a great career, several times CISO at organizations. What attracted you to the cybersecurity field?
Well, first, very kind of you to say that. Very kind of you to say that, Todd. It's been a while since we've talked, and there's been a number of years where we've worked together on conferences and things like that. So it's great to see you again. With respect to my career, I started out as an infrastructure guy, IT infrastructure guy, and one day this virus hit the company. I think it was maybe the Melissa virus or Anna Kournikova virus or the I Love You virus. It's one of those that started spreading like wildfire, and it just intrigued me. I was very intrigued by how it happened and how we responded to it happening, because at that point there wasn't much of a security program where we were, and I kind of caught the bug at that point. It's like I like this. I like figuring things out. I like figuring out how to stop things from going bad, because they can go bad quickly. And with my background in infrastructure, it just kind of worked together. So as I continued to build up my career on the infrastructure side, security became kind of a side passion for me. And then I think the company I was working for noticed that, and they noticed that things were getting worse. So they kind of groomed me to continue down that path. It worked out.
It's interesting you bring up the "I love you" virus. I mean, that really takes me back, and I remember when that happened, and countries had come back online. I was working for an organization that was global, and we had to unplug them. We had to, because they were infecting everybody else, and that was just a different time where things just spread through these viruses.
It was. I think we didn't have antivirus at that time, and we have an open mail relay, and so that night I basically taught myself Unix. I called Trend Micro and I said help. They sent me the package, and I was up for about 24 hours straight trying to get that installed and running and mail flowing again. And it was such a, I can't say it was fun, but it was a really good, cool learning experience for me.
And I'll bet you didn't have any senior management calling you during that time saying, "Where are we at? Where are we at? When are you going to have this fixed, John?" You didn't have that pressure, did you?
When's the mail going to start flowing again, John?
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about the challenges of managing security in an IT/OT environment, and it's such a critical issue today with the technology that we have on the shop floor. Tell us about that. What is the situation today that we're trying to deal with in bringing these things together?
Yeah, I think there's been a transformation, obviously, with technology. It's just everywhere now. So it's very, very easy for companies to go out and find things that are going to make them more efficient, make things operate uh, less costly, and they're starting to plug these things in, right? And I remember reading some articles, maybe in the past couple of years, about what's going to happen to the CIO, right? Because basically the business was taking over running technology because that's how they operate. And I I think it's the trend has turned a little, in my opinion, anyway. I think the CIOs are becoming more important again, but I think the challenges are that we've spent decades putting up this infrastructure that allows things to communicate with each other. And I think the businesses have found out that, hey, we could take advantage of that and start plugging things in that maybe weren't truly designed to be plugged into an open network the way they are today. They could do it without having to go to the IT department, right? Because it was so simple, it was commodity. And I think that's gotten us into a little bit of trouble, having everything connected and not really having the proper oversight in how it's being done. And and that's created a little bit of a challenge with us from a security perspective that I think people are becoming more aware of now.
The cybersecurity industry has an effectiveness problem. New technologies, vendors, and solutions emerge every year, yet we still see headlines filled with high-profile breaches. Designed to help you monitor, detect, respond, and recover from cyber attacks whenever and wherever they strike, Arctic Wolf provides the first cloud-native security operations platform, empowering organizations of any size to stand up to world-class security operations with the push of a button. Learn more about their suite of fully managed security operations solutions at CISOstoriespodcast.com/Arctic Wolf. So a lot of these things operate under the radar today. We have tool tracking systems, inventory control systems that may not have that visibility of IT. So how do we get that visibility, and what do we do about that?
Yeah, I mean, a couple things that I tried to instill with the organizations that I worked with. One, you can do it from again the commodity perspective. There's purchases being made, right? There's people are having to spend money to buy these things, and if you can inject some type of control within that process, the purchasing process itself, that might be an opportunity for visibility from the right areas of the organization, whether that be IT or cybersecurity or the security department. Obviously, the finance department's looking at it because there's approvals on how much people can spend, right? So it may be just another step in the process on the procurement side. But at the same time, I think security is grown now where we're scanning everything all the time. We have to scan all the traffic all the time because something bad could be happening in a moment. And if we see something unusual, it doesn't look right, we haven't seen it before, we should be questioning it. We should be asking, what is this? Obviously, that's our job. And then if it ties back to something that's out on the shop floor that is actually being used by the organization, we should ask questions. And I always thought that the best character trait in a good security professional is being able to ask questions, just asking why or what. And there's oftentimes I would walk out on the shop floor and I would just look up and I'd see wires going across the shop floor, and I would follow them and I'd find out where they came down and what they were plugged into. And, inevitably I'd find a wiring closet and I'd open it up and say, well, okay, what is all this? Right. And now we're, everything's wireless, so it's not necessarily walking through the warehouse anymore. But you walk around and you see people with scanners in their hand, and you ask, okay, well, what are you scanning? What's that? Well, it's how we move inventory, right? We have to scan it, and move it on to the next phase of the production line. I'm like, oh, okay. What does that scanner talk to? And I think just by getting out there and asking those questions, I think you can learn a lot. And you're not doing it to be critical of anyone, to get anybody in trouble. You just want to know, right? You just want to know what's happening. And then you take that information back and you look at your network topography and you talk to your staff and you say, hey, have you seen this before? Did we know about this? Was this approved? Do we have any controls on this whatsoever? And it just turns to a good conversation with the business. Um, And I think at some point, the business, if you approach it the right way, maybe they're not so shy about coming to you and talking to you because they know you're not going to come in and just shut them down. I think there's
Mhm.
some fear of that as well.
Are you seeing IoT devices, since we have IoT devices everywhere? Are they making its way onto the shop floor and tools and that sort of thing?
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. You can put a sensor on anything these days. And an interesting story. I worked for a company that you know how in your home now you have these meters, gas and electric and water meters that are wireless now, and the utility companies can communicate with them wirelessly. You don't have to come into your house to read your gas meter anymore. They can either drive by, or the meter itself is connected somehow where they can talk to it over wireless. Anyway, um, and we were a water company as well, so we made pumps. So anyway, they were developing this technology for monitoring the pumps out in the field. So it would let them know how the pumps were performing. It would let them know if the water levels were getting too high, for instance. They could alert somebody, and we all thought that was so cool. That's a something that we could really sell. And at that point, it was monitoring. I thought that's okay. It's not too bad. But then it turned it into monitoring and control, and then I got worried because then they could actually take action, remotely on those devices. When they saw an alert, maybe they turn off a pump, maybe they turn on a pump, and so the engine. I was close with the engineer at the time. He was a really great guy, and he showed me what they were doing. He was all excited. He goes, "Look at this, John! Look what we're doing. We can watch the water levels real time. We have a little graphic, and if the water gets too
Mhm.
high, we can flip the pump on and we can empty out the water." And I thought, "Oh, that's really cool." And he left. I went back to my desk, and then I hacked into it, and then I made I so the pump wouldn't turn on and the water overflowed everywhere. And they started screaming at me, and it was all virtual. It wasn't really happening, but they said, "John, what did you do?" And I said, "Well, I just wanted to show you that if you can control that pump, then
Mhm.
anybody can control that pump. And I just need you to think about that. I really need you to think about that in your design and how we're doing this." And so that led to a really good discussion around, how we might be able to control that. I don't know if that answers your question, but it was something that came to me.
Well, it reminds me of the fish tank in the casino, right?
Yeah,
And how they
exactly,
hacked into it's
exactly.
another, do you really need an app to monitor your fish tank?
Yeah.
And so sometimes we do that, what you just made me think of is I had a leak last year. I had bought a new condo, and I turned on the faucet to the outside balcony, um, and it wasn't told to me from the previous owner. I can't really prove that, but that the pipe was broken in the wall, probably froze
Oh,
over the winter.
right, right.
uh, and so, the neighbor comes up from downstairs and says, "Hey, are you doing something with your water? Because I got water coming through my ceiling." I thought, "Oh no!"
Oh no.
So I just turned the valve on to open the outside faucet on in the shutoff valve indoors. And so afterwards, after I got all that cleaned up, I was looking at solutions. I thought, well, there has to be a solution for,
Yeah.
like, when I'm away, if it detects water flow. And sure, there are those things, and they detect water flow. So I was doing some research on them, and then I find out, well, okay, if you have to patch these things, or replace the unit, you probably have to call in a plumber, to get a new pump in there. and
Right.
and so it just seemed like it was overcomplicating a very simple problem, where it might be easier to have like a manual valve put in there. So there are those risks, and we just extend them to different places.
We do. We do. I just heard a story yesterday. I don't know how true it is because I heard it and I thought this can't be true. They had millions of smart toothbrushes that took part in a denial of service, a DDoS attack against some company. I thought, first of all, what's a smart toothbrush, right? And secondly, how could you connect millions of them to create a DDoS attack? it kind of blows me away how far we've come with technology, and yet we haven't got a clue as to how to do it the right way.
I just see all these toothbrushes standing up, going to
Just
war
marching.
against somebody. It'd be a great graphic. Wow. Um, but so what do we do with, what kind of safeguards should we be putting in place to, knowing that we have this technology coming onto the shop floor, to protect ourselves?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. I think the thing traditionally that things that we do in terms of intrusion detection and doing some network filtering and and trying to lock down as best we can the traffic that's occurring there. I don't know if I don't know if that's a battle we're going to win. I mean, there's always going to be attackers trying to work their way around that. And, and I've been thinking about this lately. That I think putting the onus on the consumer is not going to work. It hasn't worked. I don't think going into the future it's going to work very well. And I think there needs to be more accountability for the developers of this technology. They need to be providing solutions that are secure out of the box. And when you plug them in, you don't have to worry about them. I don't know what that looks like. I'm asking probably way too much uh, of the manufacturers of these devices because of the amount of money they'd have to invest to do that. But there has to be accountability somewhere. And what disappoints me is that the manufacturers point to the consumers as the point of failure. They'll say you didn't patch it, and it just feels wrong to me. You gave me a broken product, and you're going to blame me because it's creating issues. That it doesn't feel right to me that
Mhm.
they could shift the blame like that. And maybe I'm overstating it, but a lot of these companies are held accountable for developing crappy products, and they may get hit in their pocketbook with the stock share, or they may get fines, or there may be class action lawsuits. So I'm sure they're not getting away with it per se, but I think the accountability has to start there. It really does.
Mhm.
And until we get better at that, it's a cat and mouse game. It's just going to continue to be the same cat and mouse game we've been playing for decades.
Mhm. What kind of concerns do you have around, knowing that is a backdrop where that we have these products are being created this way with our critical infrastructures,
Mhm.
and threats from nation states or organized crime for that matter. Um, what sort of concerns do you have around that?
Yeah, that's terrifying. It really is. I think it's not just the new technology that's being developed and thrown in. It's the old technology that was never designed to be connected that's still there. It's really hard to replace. Yeah, you've seen, I'm sure everybody's seen that Windows NT server that's sitting on a shop floor that can't be patched because it's so critical to the operations and nobody knows how to upgrade it. Nobody knows how to replace it. So it sits there just vulnerable and you can't patch it. There's not a lot you could do. You could isolate it. I suppose you could put firewalls around it, and you could do a lot of the mitigating controls around that. But it's still sitting there, and I think on the critical infrastructure side, all that infrastructure has been there a while. And going back to what I said earlier, it's really easy to slap a sensor on something or a control unit onto something and manage it remotely. And I think that's where the biggest fears are. Can't speak on behalf of the critical infrastructure folks, but I would imagine that's where their biggest fears are, and trying to figure out a way to control that and still get the advantages that they want out of being able to remotely manage those things, monitor them, turn things on and off. I worked a lot in the water industry at Xylem, and we talked a lot about the water, the facilities that clean the water for the municipalities, and how badly they were exposed. If something, they're pumping chemicals into the water to treat it all the time. If somebody got in there and left the switch open, and all of a sudden you've got 10 times, 100 times the chlorine that you normally see in the water, that's going to affect a lot of people pretty quick. And then
Mhm.
what do you do about it? At that point, the water's flowing to people's homes. So uh, I don't want to go too deep into it, but that's my concern.
Is it is it surprising to you that we haven't seen more of that, more of that kind of thing, or are we just not? We just not. Most people are just not hearing about it.
I, it's probably both, but I am very, very surprised from a nation state perspective, especially that we haven't seen more. There's been a few things that have happened to the electrical grid, for instance, and some water uh, uh, facilities as well. But it almost feels like that the nation states are just testing to see what they could do, how far they could get. So I'm holding my breath for a really concerted attack from a bunch of toothbrushes or something, where we might, a denial of service tech on a water treatment facility could be pretty damaging in of itself.
Hmm.
We saw it with the nuclear facilities out in was it Iran, Iraq? I forget with the Stuxnet.
Hmm.
Um, what could happen? How badly things could go really
Yeah.
quickly with a nation state if they really wanted to. I don't think the United States is immune to that. I don't think we have built up the proper uh, control framework within the United States to do much about that yet. Hopefully, we're moving in the right direction. Um,
How
at
do
this point,
we?
we're crossing our fingers and hoping.
Yeah. So how do we keep ahead of those threats and put solutions in place to protect these operational environments?
Yeah, I think what the government's doing now and a lot of these utilities, they're knee deep in the risk assessment. They want to understand where the vulnerabilities are, how the attackers work, what are the things that they need to be able to protect against. Um, but it changes fast, right? You plug one hole and two more appear. So, and this is my advice to any company is start with the risk assessment. You just have to understand your enemy and you have to understand the risks and the vulnerabilities and make sure that you're addressing the most critical ones. Maybe they could take out one electrical, you know, uh, grid in one city, and then you can quickly contain it, right? Keep it from spreading. I think those are the things they need to think about is containment. So identification and containment. That's what security is all about at this point.
Mhm. Where do you think some of the major blind spots are in organizations that are working, in manufacturing environments, with respect to this technology and not managing it as well as they could be?
Yeah, I think it depends on the industry. One of the areas that I thought is just in really bad position right now is the healthcare industry. They're just so disparate. There's no centralized kind of controls around all the different types of technologies being used in the medical industry, and they're doing the same thing, just plugging them into the network. Yeah, I don't know if you've been to the doctor's office lately, but they walk around with these carts, right, and they have everything on a computer that controls everything. And all of those are different. And my brother and my sister work in the healthcare industry as well, in the IT department, and they're trying to consolidate all the backend databases, and and all the technology that's in use seems to be which was once not connected at all are now all connected. So your points of vulnerability are just enormous, in my opinion. And I think they're quickly trying to do their best to figure out a way to close that and consolidate things and get better control around the systems and the data. Uh,
Yeah, it's a very good point you raised. A friend of mine was who's in the privacy space. She was at the doctor's office waiting for the doctor, and she decided to look on an app on her phone to see how many open access points she could find, and she found 17 open access,
yeah,
unprotected access points while sitting in the doctor's office.
right.
So it's hard to have that balance of the security versus the need for
Yeah,
patient care very quickly.
care and confidentiality. I mean, I know the ransomware folks are attacking the medical industry as well, to trying to steal as much information as they can, and that has real world, life and death consequences, right? If a doctor can't see a patient's background or medical history or even the real time uh, information about that patient because somebody broke in and encrypted it, then there's consequences to that. So that is scary too. Yeah.
Yeah, and the piece we don't talk about a lot is the whole integrity issue. What if I change that
Oh yeah.
information and it's still
Right.
available?
And now you've
Well,
got the blood sugar reading patch, on your app now. You've got pacemakers that are hooked up, and there's just, those are all the IoT devices that I'm more concerned about. It's not so much the thermostat in my house or things like or my refrigerator where I can order
mhm.
more milk, but there are consequences to some of this technology that I
And
hope we're taking
sometimes I
seriously.
wonder if it's overboard. My kids, as one of the Christmas presents they got me this past year, was a coffee cup that it's recharged. It holds a charge and it'll keep it warm for up to an hour and a half, and it has a base that can be disconnected and everything. But then it comes with this app. And it came with and I thought, what do you need an app for your coffee cup for? And it shows you the temperature, and you can set your temperature on the app. And I'm thinking to myself, was this really necessary to tie these two together? I mean, you could have had a button on the back that changed the temperature for the base. You didn't
Right.
need it. You didn't need an app to do that. But it's like
Right.
everybody wants to make these products these days that are
Hey, it's a
that
much bigger
that
discussion.
that should be another podcast topic. I think how to do a risk assessment for your house. I think
Exactly.
you just gave me an idea for a future one. Well, it's been great talking with you, John. And what sort of final advice would you give to new CISOs, emerging CISOs, current CISOs, experienced CISOs? As they're delving into this world of OT, IT, and trying to make it all secure.
Yeah, I think it's just be curious. Just be curious. Work with the business. I think one of the key qualities of a CISO is knowing. I've always said you're an inch deep but a mile wide. So you need to know a little bit about everything that goes on in your organization, and you need to know the people, and you need to talk to them because you want to know what's going on. You want to know what's driving some of the business decisions they're making and the investments that they're making, and understand it so that you can help them. You just want to help them do what they need to do to make the company successful. You don't want to stand in the way, and you don't want to be seen as an obstacle. So if you build those relationships, ask the right questions, talk to the right people, you'll be successful.
That is perfect advice and a great place to leave it. Thanks a lot, John.
Thanks, Todd. It was great seeing you. It's great talking to you.
Thank you. Likewise. Thank you for tuning in for this week's episode of the CISO Stories podcast. We want to say a special thank you to our sponsor, Arctic Wolf. Please subscribe to the CISO Stories podcast and you will receive a new story each Tuesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We'll see you next week for a new episode.